The wave of energy even affected Henry, who was standing nearby, and he was glad to survive after being discharged by the best student of the academy. Meanwhile, the big TV at the university was broadcasting news about another invasion of hordes of monsters that had caused a pogrom in the capital. While watching the news, Henry didn't notice that his classmate had been watching him closely the whole time, and only now turned her head towards her. Then he looked back at the TV, pretending not to notice her gaze, although he began to guess the reason for her attention. And then he jumped up abruptly, realizing that there was no longer any point in deceiving himself, because he had long guessed what had really happened to him. Henry really did return to this world as the 18-year-old boy he was many years ago, and now he will definitely save this planet. This outburst of emotion was unexpected, and his teacher Michelle even took a break from the lesson, trying to comprehend what was happening to her student. None of the kids in the class understood what was wrong with Henry today either, because the guy seemed to have been replaced since the morning. And then everyone suddenly burst into laughter, realizing that Henry had noticed the attention and suddenly froze, not knowing what to do in an awkward situation. Charlie didn't miss the chance to make fun of a classmate he considered an idiot who was now muttering under his breath in class. But it was at that moment that Agatha realized that the young man's gaze had changed greatly. He was no longer the intimidated guy she had known since the beginning of her studies. Instead, another young man was looking in their direction, his eyes flashing with rage, ready to tear anyone apart for a careless word. Charlie noticed the change too, but immediately put Henry in his place, telling him to make his face simpler and not act like a superhero. Agatha turned away, believing that this simpleton was pretending to be a tough macho, but in reality he would not be able to stand up for himself in a serious situation. These students, born with a silver spoon in their mouth, always looked down on Henry because of his poverty. But on the battlefield, when the demons appeared, they showed themselves to be pathetic insects, easily trampled by giant monsters. Suddenly, the young teacher told Henry directly that he could leave if he was not going to listen to the material she had prepared for the class. The guy immediately apologized and promised to sit down and calm down, explaining that he was simply pissed off by this bunch of rich kids. However, he was glad that after his rebirth he would finally stop being afraid of these idiots who had been instilling fear in him for years and preventing him from living. At that moment he turned again to his classmate, who had been worried about him more than anyone else and had not understood what was wrong with him all morning. Only now did Henry realize that he had always been in love with his classmate Sophia. But why hadn't he noticed it before? Finally, Sophia asked why he was sweating so much, as if he had a nightmare, because he had not been himself since the morning. Then she smiled and cheerfully suggested that perhaps she too appeared in his dreams at night. And Henry was simply embarrassed to admit it. But only Henry knew that he saw Sophia's beautiful face always, both in dreams and in reality, after what happened to her in the past. The girl didn't yet know what was waiting for her soon, and happily chatted with Henry, who was having a hard time containing his overwhelming emotions. He remembered very well how in his past life he had failed to save Sophia from the mutants, and she had died from a fatal wound before his eyes. If he had even a chance to become a cultivator and fix everything, he would have saved not only Sophia but also all the victims killed by the monsters. Then he suddenly turned to her and promised that this time he would definitely protect her, even at the cost of his own life. But the girl seemed not to notice his words and reminded him that she was in the ranking of the best students of the Immortal Army, already at the 8th stage of development, and if he seriously wants to become her protector someday, he will have to work hard to reach her level. With the rebirth, Henry lost the knowledge from the future, but he understood that it was only a matter of time before he could regain his skills. At that moment, he suddenly realized that someone was eavesdropping on his conversation with Sophia and closely watching him from the side. Yes, he was not mistaken, because the three guys, always hostile to Henry, had long been devouring him with predatory glances. Then Charlie, loudly slamming his fist on the desk, promised 100,000 to anyone who could embarrass Henry in front of his girlfriend. Hearing this, Agatha immediately stood up and volunteered to do it herself for the offered reward. In fact, she had her own reason for agreeing to this, and the girl promised that she would do everything in the best possible way. She then loudly claimed that Henry had stolen money from her purse, saying that she had seen him go through her things and put something in his pocket. Of course, it was a lie. But 100,000 would allow Agatha to enter the cultivation department and become the best in the academy. The students had no reason not to believe Agatha, and they immediately looked at the boy she accused of stealing. The statement was unexpected, although Henry knew that the students already despised him, and he was prepared for attacks from them. Hearing the loud accusation, Michelle did not believe it and demanded that the guy answer Agatha. To add fuel to the fire, Charlie claimed to have witnessed the theft and saw the girl's money in Henry's bag. Just in case, the guy checked the backpack with his hand, fearing that something had been planted there to confirm the accusations of theft. He understood that if Agatha searched his backpack now, she would certainly find not only money there, but also her things. It seemed that all of their classmates believed them, because they looked at Henry as if they had just now seen his true face. At that moment, the guy wondered why the guys had never given him a break before, and realized that it was all because of Charlie's envy, who also liked Sophia. Most likely, they also didn't like Henry's ease with Sophia, who for some reason chose only him out of all the students at the academy. But in this life, he was not going to tolerate the humiliations of the past, because these stupidities prevented him from fulfilling what he was reborn for. At this time, Agatha stubbornly insisted on her own, demanding that the guy return the money and things allegedly hidden in his backpack. It seems she seriously believed that the deception would not be revealed, because the teacher did not understand why the guy remained silent all this time. Finally, Sophia could not stand this onslaught on Henry, loudly standing up from her seat and deciding to stand up for him as the best student. They clearly went too far, because Sophia grew up next to Henry since childhood and was sure that he was not capable of stealing. Her words hurt Charlie's pride, because he again saw the girl defending a student whom he considered a loser. After this, a guy from the back row named Jimmy suddenly decided to stand up for Henry, saying that you can't believe a single word the student says. But Agatha said with a smile that the teacher trusted her, and not some scum from the back of the class who couldn't be listened to. She then warned Sophia not to let herself be fooled by this thief, who was supposedly much worse than she thought. Charlie also believed that Sophia's parents were wrong to take the boy under their wing, and that they would be disappointed to learn what kind of nasty things he was capable of. But the girl did not understand what they were getting at, and why they suddenly all attacked her old friend. Realizing that this was a great chance, Agatha suddenly said something that shocked everyone, throwing another dirty accusation at Henry. She stated that not only money had disappeared from her purse, but also unwashed underwear, which the guy had also taken. This news excited the class, because now Henry could be known not only as a thief, but also as a dirty pervert who steals underwear from his fellow students. Many students shouted that the boy should be immediately expelled from the academy, not wanting to sit in the same classroom with him. But these accusations did not convince Sophia to change her mind about her friend, and she was sure that nothing like that would be found in Henry's bag. Then Agatha took the next sneaky step and walked straight up to Henry's desk to finally expose him. Leaning towards him, she demanded that he show her the bag where the stolen things were allegedly kept, if, of course, he was not afraid. She again advised Sophia not to get close to him, otherwise the lustful thoughts in his head could lead to trouble. The decision was up to Sophia, but Agatha's look clearly indicated that she did not approve of friendship with the scoundrel and was waiting for Sophia to come to her senses. But for the girl, Henry was a childhood friend, and everything Agatha said seemed like implausible nonsense to her. Realizing that they were going to unleash all the dogs on Henry, Sophia asked him to end it by simply showing her the bag. Sophia, as always, was naive, because if this gang was so aggressively claiming the theft, then they had probably already planted some incriminating evidence in the backpack. If he let them open the backpack, he would definitely lose. But this time the guy was not going to become a victim of these scumbags. Now was a great chance to teach them a lesson, even though Henry had lost some of his previous skills after his rebirth. However, the Hall of Souls remained in this reality after Henry's reincarnation, and he hoped to use it to give a worthy answer. The Hall of Heroic Souls was created to protect humanity's legacy and, according to legend, the Chosen One could summon heroes of the past, appropriating their skills to battle monsters. By collecting and conducting the energy of heaven and earth, the Chosen One passed the universal power through the soul and opened the Hall of Heroic Souls even in this world. And now, being in two spaces, Henry opened the hall where he intended to meet the entity that concealed the power of thousands of warriors of the past. The hall absorbed the emotions of people's hearts, calling upon the greatest rulers, and this was the kind of power Henry had possessed in his past life. Finding himself in the center of the hall, he again called out to the brave heroes who were ready to come to his aid right now. Then he heard the voice of the entity, blaming Henry for the death of her friend, whom the boy condemned to death in order to save the world. This high pillar of souls always absorbs the obsessive ideas and thoughts of the world, opening up new places for warriors. This is exactly what should have made Henry even more powerful, because in his past life, he used this power to destroy evil aliens from other worlds. The sixth-level soul of God appeared to him only once, when he summoned Buddha, and if Henry was not mistaken, it was precisely this that he saw in front of him. He was not mistaken, and the next second Henry saw in front of him the God of Heaven, the ancestor of the earthly immortals, looking straight at him. The guy couldn't believe his eyes, because even in his past life he had never seen a saint-level spirit right in his abode. He was truly lucky, because now he had acquired a power that could not only restore his previous skills, but also raise his abilities to unprecedented heights. The spirit in front of Henry, one of the followers of the ancient religion, possessed the best technique of the magic sleeve and was ready to transfer his energy to him. True, the spirit was displeased that an inexperienced child was somehow able to summon a deity, distracting him from important matters. It seems the guy forgot, because he first had to tell the spirit his story from his past life, so that he wouldn't mistake him for a newbie. Then he made a gesture known only to chosen warriors, but the spirit seemed to find it strange and absurd. At this point, Charlie decided that his classmate was being too bold and prepared to commit a dirty trick by bringing the revelation to the end. He rushed towards Henry, ordering everyone to move aside and hold the boy back if he tried to escape. Rushing to Henry's backpack, he wanted to open it immediately to show everyone the contents and prove that he was an ordinary thief. As expected, he did indeed find Agatha's stolen handbag in Henry's backpack, and her worn lingerie was lying nearby. Now, he was ready to put Henry in his place, because he had been openly flirting with Sophia all the time, knowing that he was not the only one in the group who was not indifferent to her. But at that moment, the spirit was already next to Henry in another reality, and the guy asked him to help with one useful ability. Of course, it was stupid to waste energy on such a thing, but Henry decided to use his magic sleeve to pull the things out of his backpack before the whole class saw them. And although the spirit tried to dissuade the guy until the very end, he was unable to stop him, and Henry still used this magic. And Charlie, unsuspecting, lifted the backpack high above his head, announcing that it contained evidence. Imagine Agatha's surprise when she looked into the backpack and realized that it was completely empty. Sophia was also standing nearby and realized with a smile that all the accusations were false, as she had thought from the very beginning. The teacher looked sternly at Charlie, warned him that there was nothing in the backpack, and asked him to stop this circus. Only now did the guy realize that he was the only one in the whole group who hadn't noticed this, and was holding a completely empty backpack in his hands. Michelle once again demanded that everyone return to their seats and stop this mess. However, there was one person who did not want to let this bastard go so easily, and he grabbed him tightly by the shoulders. Henry was ready to pay him back for everything Charlie had done here, although until the very end he did not believe that this poor orphan would dare to fight with him. Then he suddenly turned to the teacher, accusing her of stupidity, since Michelle believed such scoundrels. The girl heard such words from the student for the first time, and could not understand where he got such courage to be rude to her. And then Henry announced to the whole class that Charlie himself had stolen Agatha's things, and decided to blame him out of revenge. Patting the boy on the shoulder, Henry warned him that he knew about his parents' wealth, but it certainly wouldn't help him today. And the very next second, the whole class saw how the very same handbag stolen from Agatha fell out of Charlie's pocket. Her underwear fell with her, and it became clear to everyone that he was the real thief. Looking at the stolen things on the floor, Charlie couldn't come to his senses for a few seconds, trying to find an explanation for this. It was impossible to wash away such shame, and Henry, looking from afar, understood that his plan had worked. However, by pulling off this trick, he wasted divine power that was intended for completely different purposes. The students couldn't believe their eyes, but it seemed that Charlie really was involved in some dirty dealings. The guy himself could not understand what was happening and how he ended up with this visual evidence of his vile intentions. Of course, Henry's friend didn't miss the chance to tease him, suggesting that Charlie go to a lingerie store together sometime. None of the students thought Charlie was capable of such a thing, although the girls often complained about worn-out clothes disappearing from the locker room. After this, all charges against Henry were to be dropped, and it became clear that a completely different lingerie thief had appeared in the group. One student, who had long suspected Charlie, immediately rushed to him, accusing him of stealing her new clothes from her wardrobe. She was beside herself with rage and ready to tear the guy apart, believing that he had recently snuck into the locker room and cleaned out her bag. But in response, the guy punched her in the face with all his might, because his situation was already terrible, and she was only adding fuel to the fire. It was hard to believe that the guy was capable of such a thing. But Charlie seemed to be no longer in control of his emotions and could do stupid things. After all, Jana, that was the student's name, flew back to the wall from the blow, and the class saw how this obese girl was bleeding. The teacher immediately stood up for her, sternly reminding the rich man's son that fighting was prohibited by the rules at the academy. But the guy loudly declared that he alone sets the law here, because his powerful father will solve any of his problems. And then he rushed towards Henry, intending to punish the culprit of his shame today as harshly as possible. To do this, he even activated magic, and it was clear from his appearance that he was not in the mood for peaceful conversations. The situation was clearly getting tense, so Henry quickly asked the immortal spirit for some strength. Otherwise, it would be too late. Having flown almost right up to Henry, Charlie didn't even notice how Sophia suddenly stood between them, ready to intervene. She couldn't calmly watch as destructive magic was used against someone close to her, and was ready to respond in kind. Everyone knew that she was the second best student after Julia, a 52nd rank cultivator, and she had enough strength to deal with Charlie. Throwing the training pen like a knife, she threw it so that it immediately pierced the guy's palm, and he looked at his hand, shaking with pain. One can only imagine his pain. But he